The UK's charging infrastructure isn't fit for purpose. There's a lack of chargers, they're unreliable, they're not in the right places, and they're just putting people off buying electric vehicles at the moment. At least that's what you're led to believe if you read the national newspapers and watch the national news. But is that really the case? Or should we cut them a little bit of slack? I want to have a chat about that today and maybe discuss some of my own personal experiences around charging over the last 5 years. So, for the first time in a long time, I'm very happy to say, grab yourself a coffee, make yourself comfortable, and let's have a coffee and a chat about the UK charging infrastructure. It appears to me that we want everything immediately. Of course we do. That's the world we live in now, isn't it? We want everything to be immediately available. As soon as we order it, it turns up at our doorsteps. And we want the same for our electric vehicles and the charging infrastructure. I want to be able to buy a car and charge it up wherever I go, whenever I want, at a whim. The same as I'd have with a combustion engine car if I wanted petrol or diesel. But that's just not the case at the moment. And of course, we could discuss for ages whether there's any benefits in putting the chargers in before selling the cars or vice versa. But ultimately, these things just need to balance themselves out and come along at the same time. Because if they don't, well, then people are going to be investing money and not getting any return, or their lack of investment in one area will affect the other area. And there's a real balancing act going on at the moment. So historically, what have we had? Well, when I bought my car nearly 6 years ago, there was pretty much no chargers. Electric Highway, they had all the service stations, and of course they were free at the time, which was lovely, but you had to be on a motorway to use it, and they weren't everywhere, and they're a little bit unreliable as the time went on. Other companies have joined, and people like Polar came along and they started installing charging stations, and now we see at various points around the country service stations being installed and being built that are just purely for electric vehicle chargers, which is fantastic news. But in the interim, where are we at the moment? Now, up until lockdown, I was finding things weren't too bad. And of course, if you watch this regularly, you'll know that I now drive 80 miles and I have to rapid charge every day that I go to work. So that means 40 miles, I'll do a rapid charge and then drive my 40 miles home. Where I work, at the time, there were 2 chargers that I could use. Both those chargers, one was in a supermarket car park. It was run by Engini, and the other one was a local authority rapid charger in a car park in the town centre, which I was able to access through my Polar membership. If you didn't have a Polar membership, the prices were horrendous. You had to pay with your debit card. But that's an aside. Prices, we're not going to be able to odds that. Supply and demand, prices will go up and down. We can't odds that at the moment. But I found that generally the one in the supermarket car park worked very, very well, and I could rely on that one. The one that was in the public car park, the one that I could access through my Polar card, was absolutely rubbish, and it was forever breaking. So I knew where I would go. I'd pay a little bit more for that one in the supermarket car park, but I knew it would always work, and it was always free. And that was the key. I could always drive in and know that nobody else would be on it. As lockdown came, initially, a lot of them again started offering us free charging, which was fantastic. But still, I never found anybody on the chargers. It was brilliant. I think in 3 years, maybe 2.5 years, once did I have to wait for a charger, and I think I probably moved on to another one and just used that. So there's no issues with it at all. Through lockdown, brilliant, because of course nobody was on the road. I had to keep working and I was still on the road, and I had no issue with the chargers. I've just found now, since lockdown has lifted, it has changed completely. Now, I live on the south coast, so of course people like to come here on holiday, and even though lockdown's just been lifted and people are still being cautious, it would appear that people still want to drive to the coast for their holiday, and you can't blame them. People are fed up and they want to get out and about. But I have seen more, certainly Tesla Model 3s, than I've ever seen before, but there is an influx of electric vehicles absolutely everywhere. And I'm now finding quite regularly that I have to queue or I have to wait for a charger. Now, it's got a little bit better. The town I work in, they've got those 2 chargers that I mentioned, but BP have also installed 2 of their rapid chargers, which is fantastic. I can access them through what was my Polar card. It still says Polar on it, but of course BP took them over. So I can access it through that and pay for it through my Polar account, which is lovely. Problem is, those BP chargers, although they're brand new, they hardly ever work. They are constantly out of order, and it drives me mad because I thought that was going to be the perfect place to go. There's 2 chargers, I'll always get on one of them, and they were just trouble-free. I think I've spent more times going to them and driving away going to one of the other chargers with them not working than I have when they work. And when you phone them up, their customer service is pretty average at best. They take a note of what's going on and say they'll fix it. No timescales, they never get back to you. You just have to expect that at some point they'll be fixed. So you find you then drive in on your way to work, time's limited because you need to charge and get to work so you can get home. You waste time driving in and then having to come back out, drive down the road, go to another charger in the hope that the next one works and the next one's free. In the meantime, on the route that I travel to work, there's also there's also 2 Instavolt chargers being installed. And again, that's brilliant because I can drive up my credit or debit card, tap it on there, and they work. And they have been working really, really well. But I have also had a problem with one of them, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. So overall, chargers are popping up, and there's certainly an awful lot more than there were 5 years ago. And there's plans that I keep hearing about Shell's putting whole service stations in, and there's plans and places where they're being built at the moment. And there's a Shell service station I go past that they're about to knock down and rebuild, and there's charging points going in there. So yes, they are increasing, but I don't think they're increasing quickly enough. I think the problem is, certainly with lockdown and people thinking about the environment, an awful lot more people have bought electric vehicles, and there's just not the investment. And we hear about various brands, companies that build cars investing in electric charge points or companies to help bring their brand and the charge points along. But the bottom line is nobody's done it like Tesla. And I hear time and time again people saying, I'm buying a Tesla simply because I can rely on their charge points. I know when I go, everything will work, there'll be plenty, I won't have to wait. And surely the manufacturers are understanding now that they need to do an awful lot more than what they're already doing, because if they don't, they're going to lose more sales to Tesla. There is Model 3s literally everywhere. I pass 5 or 6 every time I do that 40-mile journey. I probably only pass a couple of other electric cars. They are just everywhere. So it's not just about the car, it's about the complete package, and manufacturers, in my view, need to start understanding that. But in the meantime, we've got these companies like Shell, like BP, like Instavolt, that if they want to be part of that infrastructure, then they need to do something to better themselves. They need to give us reliability, and they need to make sure that those charging points are in strategic locations where we can get to them easily, not down an A road 4 or 5 miles off the motorway or wherever we need to be. We need them on those main routes, and we need them in and out of towns, so we don't have to drive into the town centre in order just to get our charge. So I was going to tell you about my issue with Instavolt. My issue with Instavolt was coming home one day from work. I didn't quite have enough charge. I'd done a few other things and I knew I had to stop. I had no worries about stopping at the Instavolt charger. It's never caused me a problem. It's right on the main road. I drive straight past it. There's a coffee shop there. So what more could you possibly want? I pulled in, plugged it in. It all worked fine. It was about -3 and it was the early hours of the morning. So I charged up and I only needed a small amount of charge. I was probably only there for less than 10 minutes. When I came to release the charger or stop the charger, it wouldn't work. It was like the touchscreen had frozen. Nothing would work on it. I played around with it for a bit, couldn't get it to stop. There's no stop button on those chargers. So I phoned up their customer services. Eventually I got through to somebody who happened to be in America. That's fine, they're very polite and very understanding. But ultimately they didn't really understand what I was telling them that was wrong. So they were asking me to find release catches in the car and try and tell me what the charge point was. I told them the number that was on it, but they wanted serial numbers and model numbers, and they just aren't written on the chargers. So the long and short of it is that phone call went on for over 15 minutes. During that 15 minutes, I almost gave up with what she was asking me to do and just started playing with the screen again, playing with the car. And ultimately the touch screen just fired into life and it stopped the charge. I thanked the lady very much and on I went. But that's the kind of thing that Can you imagine if you were on a test drive and that happened? You would straight away say, sack this, I'm not having an electric car. Why would I put myself through that? If you were someone new or you were looking to buy a second car and you had an electric car and went through that regularly, why would you put yourself through it again with all your cars? It is spoiling a very, very good uptake of electric cars, and there is that worry, and I understand that worry. And I can't stand here and preach to you and say, buy an electric car, it's brilliant, if I know that in my heart of hearts, I've had problems as well. Now, of course, electric cars are getting more and more mileage. A lot of them can now do over 200 miles. When that becomes the cheap standard, of course, chargers, they're not going to be such a worry because our day-to-day driving, we're going to use them less and less. But at the moment, the affordable cars are the Leaf, the Zoe, they're lower mileage cars. So if you want to do these kind of journeys that I'm doing, you have to rely on the electric chargers. So what are they doing? What are these companies doing? Well, I'm sure they're all in their own way doing a little bit of something. One of the things I've noticed today is that InstaVolt have teamed up with the AA, two great big companies here in the UK. The AA, known for their breakdown services, but they are going to now provide customer service to InstaVolt, which I think with the correct training and the correct implementation, that could change things. Because when you phone up when you've got a problem, quite often those problems are something like it just won't release. And quite often it's something that you've done with your car. Maybe just unlock the car and it will release. It might be that remotely they just tap into the charger and they can release it for you. But you need somebody that knows it inside out, back to front. You need somebody that knows the UK specification on the charger that's there and the car you've got. You don't want somebody just reading off a crib sheet. You need somebody that knows it inside out, back to front. And I hope that's what the AA will provide. I hope that if you phone up, it will be a simple, somebody local that understands exactly where you are in the country, what car you've got, and how that talks to the charger, and they can help you out. And little things like that need to come into place along with the bigger picture of let's get more chargers in the right places. As I say, when it comes to cost, there's nothing we can do about that. If we want to charge, then we have to pay the prices. We get the cheap charging at home, and you can do all sorts to manipulate your electricity prices at home with the providers you use and how you use them. I think that's a video for another day perhaps. But yeah, it really is up to the companies just to get things in the right places. And the only way that we can affect that or alter that is whether we buy the electric cars and whether we use their chargers. So kind of people power, but I'm hoping that the companies themselves will start to take note and actually start to take things seriously, because it does feel to me at the moment like they're just all kind of playing at it. And I'm really not impressed with how they've treated us as customers up to this point, if they want us to take them seriously and take electric vehicles seriously. But what are your findings? How have you found electric charging? Have you had the complete opposite to me? Have you found it perfect and you've been very, very happy with it? Or are you also having to say to your friends that are interested in electric vehicles, they're great, I love the cars, they work really well, but if you regularly want to charge outside of your home address, then maybe think twice about it, because I can't recommend an electric car to anyone at the moment who needs to charge regularly outside of their house. What are your views? And that's it for me today. I just wanted to share with you my feelings. Stick something in the comments below of what you think and what your feelings are. Thanks ever so much for watching. I've enjoyed our little chat today. It's nice to, although mine's a little bit cold now, it's nice to get involved and have another coffee and a chat with you all. And let's hope we do a few more soon. You take care, all the best.